What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. We've got big news. The Green Bay Packers have a new special teams coordinator. All of the Packers' problems are solved. There is legitimacy within the Packers' special teams offices. Rich Bisaccia is your new Packers special teams coordinator. As of recording this, not made official by the team quite yet, but reported by Ian Rappaport, confirmed by Rob Demovsky, that the Packers will in fact have a new special teams coordinator who not only has been a special teams coordinator, but put together a pretty impressive head coaching campaign as a member of your Las Vegas Raiders this past year. So let's go over exactly what this means. I'm going to go through a couple of topics today, but this is by far and away the most important one. I think the thing that strikes me the most about this is his leadership and his experience. Obviously, he's a 20-year special teams coordinator, special teams coach in this league, and has all of the knowledge and motivational ability and just general experience to get the most out of a position and a group of players and just an entire special teams that has been nothing short of abysmal for the better half of a couple decades, right? This is, in my opinion, the right person that you want in this role to turn this thing around and get started in the right direction. And I think that's the important thing to remember here. This isn't an overnight rework. This is going to take some time. But I think this is exactly the type of coach that you want to come in and start making incremental changes to this Packers special teams. It's the first step of a process, which we'll get into more in just a moment. But I posted this on Twitter. I believe this is very similar to a Jerry Gray style hiring as a defensive backs coach when Green Bay got Jerry Gray. Tons of experience, knows the role, great teacher, great motivator, knows how to get the most out of his players. You know, Green Bay had a secondary that was basically Jair Alexander and a bunch of question marks. You know, they had Amos as well. But they needed somebody to come in and really start to get these young players playing better and make some changes in all of it, right? And at first, there were some struggles, right? These things don't happen overnight. You need to make some changes. Kadar Hallman and Josh Jackson weren't fit, so you end up moving on. But all of a sudden, before you know it, and obviously some additional resources were put into this as well, and you found a Rasul Douglas and drafted an Eric Stokes, but before you know it, Green Bay has a really impressive defensive backs room. And that, again, is part coaching, that is part the players, that is part scouting and you know, general manager Brian Gutekunst and player personnel, etc. But you see, when you meld all of those together with good coaching, good players, good talent evaluation, exactly what can happen. You end up in a playoff game where you have Rasul Douglas, Eric Stokes, and Jair Alexander, you know, etc. Not to mention, you know, Chandon Sullivan and Kevin King, which as your fourth and fifth guys is much more impressive, right? And now you have a really good secondary and a secondary that Jimmy Garoppolo basically can't pass against. You get the right guy as coach, and then you start making those subtle changes, and before you know it, you have a really good unit on your hands. And that was the Packers defensive backs this past year, specifically the cornerback position. I think that same thing can happen with special teams in this scenario. And I think with Rich Bisaccia, you get a very similar style coach and approach with Bisaccia as you did with Jerry Gray. And I think that can really pay dividends. And I think, again, that leadership and that experience and that ability to motivate players can go a long way. The other thing that I really like here about Rich Bisaccia is what he was able to do with the Raiders this past season. If you need a guy to come in to a unit that has been decimated, that just lost you your biggest game of the year, eliminated you from the playoffs, that is the worst in football, that is beyond terrible, and you need a guy to come in and change the culture entirely, how about a freaking head coach that literally had to go in mid-season, take over for John Gruden amongst a ton of chaos, then have the whole Henry Ruggs situation. There was a ton going on with the entire Raiders season. Oh, by the way, you have the Chiefs in your division. You have Justin Herbert as the other, one of the other quarterbacks in your division. And yet you still find a way to make the playoffs. That is overcoming adversity. That is showing leadership. That is taking an awful situation and figuring out a way to make it better and make it successful. That's what Bisaccia did with the Raiders this past season. And that's what the hope is that he can do with the Green Bay Packers for their special teams unit. And I think the other thing that's important here too, right? I've heard the chatter on Twitter. Well, Andy, like, how can you say that this is a great hire or a great coach? And let me start by saying we won't until we see the results. The proof is in the pudding. We won't know if this was a good hire until he proves that he's a good hire. But there's a lot of reasons that I like it. And one of these is these are the type of coaches that you want in your building. Now, there's always the argument, right, of there's a lot of good people in the world. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll make a good football coach, doesn't necessarily mean they'll make a good quarterback. Like, you have to have the talent, the wherewithal, the ability. Heck, Mo Drayton, by all accounts, is an amazing person, great motivator, all of those things. He just didn't have the results. And guess what? Those matter a ton. But I believe that Bisaccia has that experience, has shown he can get results, at least not be a bottom-feeding special teams unit, and has, like, the Raiders players were adamant that they wanted him back as head coach this past season. And the team, of course, went in a different direction. But his candidacy as head coach in other spots like Jacksonville was not just that easily could have happened. And there were many that were calling for him to get another head coaching opportunity. To have that type of mind and motivator and, again, experience, just general NFL knowledge in your locker room, another guy that, again, who knows where COVID's going to go from here, but another guy that has actual head coaching experience in the league, where if Matt LaFleur misses a couple games due to COVID or anything else, you have a guy that can step up and be a coach in that situation, because you don't have a Nathaniel Hackett anymore, right? Bates, hasn't been in that position. Like, you don't have guys on this staff that have been head coaches or are up and coming, ready to be head coaches. You add that to your staff as well, and there's a big benefit to that. And I think, Max Crosby was a player who was very adamant about how great Bisaccia did with the Raiders as head coach, and pushing for him to come back. I think you start hearing some of those stories and you realize the type of character and just coaching profile that Green Bay is getting by adding him into the locker room. I think that is a very positive thing. Oh, by the way, he's also been a pretty decent special teams coordinator as well. Now, again, as I mentioned, I've heard the things of his special teams haven't been trending in the right direction. First of all, I would throw out this past year, because it's not like he had the ability to fully run his special teams and focus on that through the entirety of the season. He had to pivot midway and become the head coach of the team. So I'm throwing that performance out last season. But over the last 16 seasons, and oh, by the way, go and check out Bill Huber's articles on Bisaccia, because they are incredibly valuable to get a lot of this information from. He did a lot of great research on it, so make sure to check out those articles. But a few of the things he noted here is that Bisaccia finished better than Green Bay in special teams in 15 of the last 16 seasons. So that's a good place to start, that this guy has had, again, all of those years of experience and has finished much better in Green Bay when it comes to special teams. And also, he averaged over 11 and a half spots higher than Green Bay in special teams rankings over the course of that time as well. So, again, a massive improvement potentially. His average rank in DVOA when it comes to special teams, and kudos to Dusty Evely on Twitter for figuring this out and posting this, ranked 16th in DVOA over the course of his career as a special teams coordinator. Literal league average. And if you look at the DOA, it's basically even, which means, again, you are expecting an average special teams. And that may not be the sexiest thing in the world. I will sign on the dotted line from here to eternity on whatever document you need me to sign. I will e-sign it. I will e-verify it. I will sign it in blood. I will do whatever you need to do to sign up for the 16th ranked special teams for the Green Bay Packers from here until the end of eternity. Sign me the heck up. I will absolutely do that in a second and never think twice. I will sprint to that letter and sign it as quickly, or that document, and sign it as quickly as I possibly could. That would be such a massive improvement. And you can argue that Green Bay probably, at minimum, with that sort of results over the last 16 years, gets by the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game and gets past the 49ers in the divisional round this past season. Sign me the heck up for that. Maybe too little, too late? Arguably, yes. But give it to me moving forward if that's what he can bring to the table. Now, I don't think Bisaccia is going to be this new, bright, innovative mind that's going to just revolutionize the Packers special teams. I don't think that's who he is, right? I don't think he's all of a sudden going to design a new formation or a new playbook that everyone's going to be rushing to copy. I don't think that's who he is. I think this is going to be somebody who takes care of the fundamentals on special teams and makes sure that there's not the catastrophic things happening and making sure that everyone's doing their job the way that they're supposed to be. So you're not having blocked field goals. So you're not having blocked punts. So that you're covering the punts the way that you need to. So that the punter and the kicker and everyone on the field goal team are all on the same page and you don't have these random deviations when it hurts you most. Those are the things that I think he's going to bring to the table. And as per Ben Fennell on Twitter, as he posted, very importantly, Bisaccia hasn't had a kick or a punt blocked in the last 5 years. Again, sign me the heck up. The Packers special teams doesn't need to be spectacular. They just need to get incrementally better. And if you start making these small improvements before you know it, you have a solid special teams unit and you have a group that can help you win football games rather than be the reason that you were losing them. This is just the start of any process. And as we've talked about multiple times over the last couple weeks, this is not the fix. This is not the be-all, end-all. If all Green Bay does is take the Rich Bisaccia Band-Aid and says, special teams fixed, we're good, set it and forget it, they're screwed again. Because again, you have all the other pieces that remain in place of a dysfunctional special teams unit for 2 decades. It's going to take more than that. It's going to take different personnel. It's going to take more practice. It's going to take more emphasis. Players need to understand the importance. And as Mike Wall talks about on here, it's going to have to be a player-led process at times. That some of these players not only will play on special teams, but want to play on special teams. That it becomes a key focus for the entirety of this football team if they legitimately want to make it better. But now, I believe they have the right person that is guiding the ship, and hopefully that can be the first step of the process to get Green Bay back to being a respectable special teams unit. So now, of course, that Green Bay may have a respectable special teams coach, what does that mean for special teams moving forward? Well, ESPN has an article how the NFL is going to take a major look at special teams again, which could potentially affect rule changes to punts and kickoffs. And why is this an issue? Well, they realized that concussions were happening at a higher rate on special teams still. 30% of the ACL tears this past season happened on special teams. 29% of lower extremity issues happened on special teams, despite special teams only being 17% of the plays. That was, again, per Kevin Seifert on ESPN on Twitter, and again, the article via ESPN. So the NFL is going to look at punts and kickoffs and make some rule changes or potential rule changes, or look to change the way that teams and players train to avoid some of these collisions and injuries. And you don't have to look past Green Bay, right? Kylan Hill has a torn ACL right now due to, special teams. It just is what it is. So we could be seeing not only a change in the Packers special teams coach and philosophy, we could see some changes in the rules and how special teams are played moving forward. And that's going to be another thing that's worth looking at this offseason. Last note from today, Packers did make a transaction. They did sign tight end Alize Mack to their roster to a reserves future deal. So with Green Bay's tight end room being a little bit in flux, Robert Tonyan free agent, Mercedes Lewis's future is in doubt. They're going to have to make some decisions on that position moving forward. They get another guy to come in and potentially compete. And again, that is Alize Mack, your favorite new Packers tight end. That is going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, I will be right back here tomorrow on the YouTube channel, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.